In this tutorial, you will learn how to do subsurface scattering for your Minecraft Bedrock texture pack. This tutorial will encompass a couple of steps, but first make sure you have the following programs: Blockbench, a software for editing images that allow you to edit RGB channel such as Photoshop or Photophea, and of course Minecraft Bedrock. First, let's open Blockbench. Once open, select File, New, Bedrock block. You can name it whatever you want. Click Confirm. You don't necessarily need to do this step, but it helps with the visualization. Once open, in the Outliner window, click Add Cube. On the Element window, let's change the size to 16 on the first 3 fields. Now let's use the Pivot tool to place the cube in the center. Now, let's click the Paint tab on the upper right side of the screen. Let's drag the texture that you want to transform into the Textures window. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using the tall grass texture. It's actually shown as short grass in the game, but the name of the files is just tall grass. So I can drag the texture in and click Import Texture. It should show in the view like this. Please note that if your texture is a TGA file, you will need to transform it temporarily into a PNG file during this process, as currently Blockbench does not support TGAs. For this tutorial, we'll use Photophea, as it is free to use and is web-based. You can use any other image editing program that allows you to change images into PNGs, but I will keep it streamlined with Photophea for the other parts of the tutorial. Open your TGA in Photophea. If your texture is meant to have transparency, make sure to edit and delete the background. This is mostly used for visual inside Blockbench. Since we're going to erase this texture at the end, it should not cause much issues. Once done, click File, Export as PNG. Make sure to save it on the same folder as your main texture file. Once done, let's import it into the Textures windows. As you can see, the texture is there, but shown as a cube. This is merely visual and won't affect the outcome of your texture. Now, right-click your texture and click Create Material. Once done, Blockbench will create a .json file on the source folder of the texture. Now you can add a height value and a roughness map, but what we're looking for is the metalness value, as this will define the subsurface scattering value later on. For this, click your PNG and then right-click on the .json field, and then click Generate PBR map. Do the height and roughness as you wish. With the PBR channel set to metalness, set the preferred value for your texture. Remember, the higher the values, the stronger the effect will be. In simple terms, the more red your image is, the more light will pass through it, and the darker it is, the effect will be lesser. Once done, confirm your changes. Now make sure to save all of your changes: the .json file, the height in this case, and most important, the MER PNG file. Remember to save all the files on the same folder where your texture is located. You can also change the view mode into material preview and the preview into a preview scene into something of your liking. This will reflect closer to how it is in game, but is not 100% accurate. And currently, you will see the preview as metallic, as Blockbench currently does not support subsurface scattering. To change that in game, we need to do a couple of things: changing the .json file properties, and add an additional RGB channel to your texture. On the .json file, we need to change the format version and change one of the fields. You can simply do this in Blockbench by simply right-clicking the .json field and then go to Properties. Then click the Subsurface Scattering checkbox and then click Confirm. This will change both the version and the metal emissive and roughness field in your .json file. Once done, remember to click Save on your .json field. Once done, you can skip to this timestamp. If you want to do this manually, follow these steps. First, let's right-click your .json file and click Show in File Explorer. This will open the location of the .json file with the file already selected. We can open the .json file with a text editor. The default Windows one should be more than enough. If you're feeling fancy, you can use something like Notepad++. For Mac users, you can use whatever default text editor you have available. If for some reason that causes issues, try using Notepad++. Now open the file. Once opened, you will see a couple of text lines that tells the game's engine how to handle the materials of your texture. What we need to change here is the format version and the metalness, emissive and roughness lines. For the format version, currently Blockbench creates an older version that doesn't support subsurface scattering. To fix this, let's change the format version from 1.16.100 to 1.21.30. Make sure you change only the numbers within the apostrophes, leave everything else as is. Now we need to add underscore subsurface to the metalness, emissive, roughness line. Write in or copy paste underscore subsurface between the end of roughness and the apostrophe. Again, make sure you only add the underscore subsurface and do not change anything else. Make sure to hit save, and we are halfway done. Now we need to edit the MER file with an image editor. For this tutorial we'll use Photophea, as it is free to use and is web-based. You can use Photoshop or any other program that allows you to edit the RGB channels. Our goal is to turn the MER PNG file into a DGA file, as the subsurface scattering effect requires the information of the force channel for this effect, and DGA is both the file type that supports this feature and one that Minecraft Bedrock uses. First, locate your MER PNG file, which will be in the same folder as your other textures. Now drag it into Photophea. On the right side where your layers are, you should find the channel tab. If you don't see it, you can click on Window, then Channels to make it appear. Once you see the channels, click on the red one. Select it all by pressing Ctrl A and copy it with Ctrl C. Once copied and still selected, we are going to erase it with the delete key. This should turn the image black. Now we are going to click New Layer, which is going to create a new one named Alpha 1. We will paste our copy with Ctrl V. Once done and your image looks something like this, we can save it as a TGA. For Photophea, you can do this by clicking File, Export As, More, TGA. The values should look something like this. Click Save and place it where your main texture is. Once saved, you need to erase the old MER PNG file, as keeping this around will cause issues in-game. If your main texture was a TGA file that you turned into a PNG to be used in Blockbench, you should also erase that one, just to be safe. For the tallgrass texture, there's a PNG and TGA naturally within the game files, so I'm going to leave this as is. If for some reason doing this causes issues, I will try to erase the PNG file. Otherwise, for this tutorial and for this very texture, I will keep it as is. But once again, a reminder, if you transform a TGA to PNG to use on Blockbench, then it wouldn't be a bad time to erase it. After all this, the texture should be ready to be used in game. And with that, you should be done. And you should be ready to edit every single file you want into a subsurface scattering one. However, now we go into troubleshooting. Most of these cases can cause by overlooking a step in the process, but for insurance, here are some of the most common ones. My texture shows up as metallic. Make sure to change the format version from 1.16.100 to 1.21.30 and remove the red metallic channel from your TGA. My texture isn't showing the subsurface effect. Make sure to add the underscore subsurface line at the end of the metal emissive roughness line and before the apostrophe. My texture isn't showing the subsurface effect, I think. Subsurface scattering can be a subtle effect that can be hard to notice sometimes. If you feel like it's not showing enough, increase the values on the channel, more red in Blockbench and more white in the channel layer. My texture is showing black and purple. Are you sure you are not editing in Half-Life source? Alright. Well, that aside, make sure all of your files are in the same folder as your texture. You should have 3 to 4 files by the end of this tutorial. The main PNG TGA texture, the .json file, the MER TGA file, and the height PNG file. As far as I know, the height file is not necessary, but the other 3 certainly are. Make sure they are on the same folder as your main texture. My texture didn't change at all. Remember that some textures have multiple variants of it. Most foliage textures have the main textures, the opaque textures, and the carried texture. Make sure you do this process for all of them. If after all this you still have problems, you can do the nuclear option, which is to erase everything and try again from the start. I usually don't recommend this, but sometimes we miss a step while clicking on and off from my tutorial. Can you do this for other textures? In theory, yes. You can do this exact process for, allegedly, all textures in game. Just make sure all the files you create are grouped together in the same folder of the main texture you are editing. You can just put the mob textures like any other block texture and work it like that. It'll be the same, right? He's hoping Blockbench soon adds support for TGA and subsurface scattering, but for now they should help. Anyways, that should be for this tutorial. Hopefully you learned something new and it was useful. You can leave questions in the comments, but I fear that might be because something was amiss in the tutorial or something. I guess we'll see. If you want to support me, you can always check out my texture pack, named the Pastel Pack, in the Bedrock Store. You can find it for free as PastelCraft on the official links. Thank you and thanks for watching.